Hey everyone, this is Diogo C for Gearspace.com, and today I'm very happy to share with you our very first plugin done in collaboration with TB Pro Audio. This is GSat Plus. This is a free plugin, so you can download right away. There's a link in the description for that. And this is a gain stage plugin with some added functionality such as saturation and clip limiting. I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough of the main functions on GSat Plus, then I'm gonna show you some examples, get some audio running through GSat Plus, and also show you a few tricks that we came up with. Okay, so first thing to mention here is that GSat Plus is available for Mac and Windows on all major formats, VST, audio unit, AAX, so you can use it pretty much on any DAW that's out there. And the second thing to notice is that the interface is fully resizable. You don't need to use a big interface like I have here. You can simply click on the bottom right corner and resize it to taste. TB Pro Audio has done an amazing job on this feature, so you can use any size you like. It'll look good no matter what. It'll look good on basically any screen size or resolution that you're working with, so feel free to adjust the interface size as you please. And last thing to mention here is that GSat Plus is super lightweight, so you can have a bunch of instances on your sessions. It will not bog down your CPU or anything. So even if you have an older computer, you can still use many instances of this plugin without any issue. And this is also a zero latency plugin. Unless you're using the oversample section that we have here, it will run as zero latency. If you're using oversample, of course, it will add a bit of latency. It's a trade-off. It gives you a bit more audio quality, but the downside is that you get some latency. Okay, so let's dive into the feature set now. GSat Plus can basically be divided into three big areas. First is the monitor section, where you have the VUs, input and output trim, monitor controls and everything. Then we have the saturation section, and lastly we have the clipper. So the signal flow would be input trim, then saturation, then the output trim, and finally the clipper, the ceiling parameter. Okay, so let's talk about the monitor section. First thing, I'm gonna get some action on those meters. Okay, so it's now set to VU, but you can also set to peak, RMS, EBU momentary, and EBU short term. I'm gonna set back to VU. So the red needle, as you can see, is the max value, and the black needle is the real-time measurement. Okay, so from left to right, we have input trim from -24 to +24 dB. You can select if the meters are reading the input of the plugin or the output of the plugin. You can calibrate your 0 dB point. So gonna set it to -18. We have two monitor modes, and here I'm gonna get some audio going to show you this feature. So you can isolate left, right, mid, or side. So let's go back to stereo now. And finally, we have an output trim, also from -24 dB to +24 dB. Okay, so moving on to the saturation section. First thing, we have to enable it. Click on this little button on the left side. Then we can choose if the saturation is applied to stereo, left, right, mid, or side portions of the signal. Then we have 4 characters to choose from, Those are all based on tube saturation models. So we have clean, warm, crisp, and classic. And clean, warm, and crisp share the same parameters, while classic only has the odd harmonics parameter. So let's go back to clean. Then we have the stages control, which is basically more tube, so more stages, more saturation. Then we have the fluctuation parameter, which is kind of a randomizer. It's not a dramatic effect unless you really crank it up to 100%. We'll do that later in the video, but more fluctuation, more randomness, let's put it this way. So if you want a really steady sound, just stay on 0% or low values anyway. So finally, we have odd and even harmonics. So the more you push, more saturation you get. And last but not least, let's talk about the clipper section. Same as saturation, you can enable the clipper by clicking on this little button here, or you can simply click and drag the ceiling knob. You can also enter numeric values with your keyboard. So let's say -20. And this is a straightforward clipper. But if you really push it, if you really lower the ceiling or raise the input and hit it really hard, you can get some interesting distorted sounds, some fuzzy like distortion going on here as well. We also have the oversample section, which we mentioned earlier in the video. And finally, a bypass, which bypasses the entire plugin, including the meters, not only the processing, the saturation, the clipper, but also the meters. Okay, so let's get to the fun part and get some audio going through GSat Plus. Okay, so first example will be simple saturation. I'm gonna be using the same drum loop as before, and I'm really cranking up odd and even harmonics, using 2 stages of saturation for this one. I'm using the warm character, a bit of fluctuation just to spice things up. And I'm also using the clipper, but not in a dramatic fashion. It's only to catch a few peaks here and there. And I'm also going for 2 times oversampling just to get that extra bit of quality. First, I'm gonna play the dry loop with GSat on bypass, then I'm gonna enable GSat Plus and keep going back and forth so you can spot the difference. Okay, so let's do this. So for our second example, I have a synth loop, which is pretty much dead and a bit boring. Doesn't have anything going on in terms of stereo action. So I'm using GSat Plus not only to add some saturation, some spice, but also to inject a bit more of a stereo life into this loop. And for this, I'm really cranking up everything, but most importantly, the fluctuation parameter is the key thing here. You really have to crank it up all the way to the top to get this stereo thing going. And for this one, I'm using the crisp character, which to my ears is the best for this sort of application. So keep an eye out for the monitor section for the mid and side controls. which I'm gonna be using to isolate those portions of the signal so you can really get a feel of what's happening and what GSat Plus is bringing to this loop. Okay, so for our final example, it's all about the clipper. I'll be using GSat Plus as a heavy distortion unit to generate a fuzz-like sound, which you can use on its own, or you can follow up with a low-pass filter or a guitar amp simulation, which I'm gonna be using on this one. So I have this bass guitar loop, and I'm following up with GSat Plus by really cranking up the input to really hit that clipper hard. And later on this example, I'll be using a bass guitar amp simulator, so you can really get a feel of how it acts, almost like a stomp box in a way, to really drive the signal, to really give that extra heavy distortion, which I think can be really useful for not only bass guitar, but also electric guitar, synth lines, and basically anything that can benefit from distortion, which is highly useful in some music styles. Okay, so first, as always, dry loop, then some GSat Plus, then I'm gonna follow up with the bass guitar amp simulation. All right, so that was pretty cool. That's one of the coolest features, in my personal opinion, about GSat Plus, the fact that you can really drive that clipper for some really cool fuzz sounds. All right, so let's wrap this one up. Final 2 bits for this video. So I just wanted to show you how a session looks like when you have 40 instances of GSat Plus going on. So I have a mix of mono and stereo instances of GSat Plus, and my computer, which is a 2015 MacBook Pro, is barely hitting 10% on Pro Tools. So I'm gonna press play just to have some action, and it's really low. You can see on average it's hovering around 12% on the CPU, so you can really have as many instances as you need of GSat Plus. You can use it as a first line of action plugin before your compressors, your EQs, and so on, or you can also use it after everything to add that final touch of saturation to your mix. And that's about it. Once again, GSat Plus is now available. It's a free download. There's a link in the description for that. I'll also leave a link for the Gear Space discussion thread so you guys can share your talks about GSat Plus, ask any questions. We'll be there to answer as best as possible. Once again, thank you all for this one. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye.